But yeah, I wanted to cover something pretty interesting that was somewhat sparked by a conversation Justin and I were having, but also Jason, when we were looking at the Winch channel today, you came up in conversation in this subject. And the subject was that most people drastically underestimate how much weight they actually have to lose when it comes to reaching their goal physique. Drastically underestimate how much weight they have to lose when it comes to goal physique. So before we get into that, Jason, I'm kind of curious, like when you first started, I know in the message you said that you didn't really have, sub 150 even on the radar. Well, what does that like process look like for you as you've progressed and lost weight and kind of seen the progress and continue to lose weight like more than you thought you would?
Yeah, I think the thing that, is a lot of learning, right, about what it looks like to get there. I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of the belief that you're going to grow muscle and lose fat and it's going to be a zero-sum game or even an opposite game like, oh, I'll just gain weight. But then, as I've looked at it, talked to you guys, all that, it's like you're not just going to magically like lose a bunch of fat, gain a bunch of muscle, stay 160 pounds, and now be 12% body fat. Like it doesn't work that way. You got to get down there and then kind of grow back later. Is the big thing that I learned, or I've been learning. It's just, if I was younger, maybe it wouldn't have been as drastic of a weight loss because maybe my muscles would grow a little faster, but I'm 45 years old and I've done a lot of this in my life. But all that, I think that's the biggest thing for me is like I had no clue. I just knew that 15% body fat is what people say is healthy, and I was sitting at 19 plus, and that wasn't right, right? Like, and then as you and I have talked about, had some scary things happen earlier in the year that were more scary than real, but at the same time, kind of a wake up call for me. And so just so at the end of the day, I didn't know what I wanted. I just knew I wanted to be healthy. And then as we got down this path and looking at, sort of what my calorie goals were, my protein goal was 144 grams. I'm like, am I really shooting for 145? A weight that I haven't been since I was like 20 years old,
Mhm.
right? But that's I think what we're really looking at, right? And it's like so I'm seeing that that's going to get me to where I am. The body composition has been changing pretty drastically. As I mentioned in my reply to or I think I told Chris this, the wife noticed that she can see my lats from the front
Let's go.
uh now. So like little things like that are starting to help. And so yeah, so I think like longer term, will I try and put some weight back on? Maybe, right? Maybe not. I mean, it feels kind of good so far to be light. It's weird.
Yeah.
Jason, what was your original goal?
My original goal is just the from a number perspective is start to get to my a 15% body count on body fat. That's really what it was,
What about weight wise though?
what's that?
Weight wise.
We had no number. I had
Oh,
no
okay, okay.
number. I think that Chris and Gabe had a number, but they weren't really telling it to me early on.
Yeah,
Because they kept saying, "Oh, we'll just see how you feel as you go, right? We'll just see how you
yeah.
feel. You want to stop at some time, you feel great, it's fine." But as it went down quick early, and then I plateaued for a bit, which was frustrating. And but then it started to go down again, and so yeah, it's been a neat little process. But yeah, I had no actual weight. I was really more about I wanted to see a six pack again, which I hadn't seen since I was a swimmer in college. So, and again, because that just to me is a sign of fitness, right?
Mhm.
And since then, now all the other stuff of just like I feel better. I'm I'm lugging stuff around the house that not getting winded like I used to. Like I used to be able to, man up and move something for the wife or whatever, but now I'm doing it and it's just like not the same kind of stress factor. Don't feel like I'm extremely tired, want to sit down when I'm done, that kind of thing. And so it feels good. Especially because I don't know, how old are you, Justin?
I'm 35.
Okay. So as I enter my 40s, like everybody just tells you, oh, it's just you got to live with certain things now that you're in your 40s. And I'm just like, I don't want to live like this. And I had
Oh,
accepted that. And now I'm like, I don't have the same aches and pains. I used to like
mhm.
all that stuff. It's just I feel
That's
better.
amazing to hear, dude. So amazing.
So anyway.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I know. And when we first talked, it was interesting because the conversation was very much around just body composition improving, right? And it was kind of hard to nail down a specific goal weight that you have in mind. And I've had that a lot with certain people where there's just not a number on the scale that really matters to them. And at the end of the day, like it is not the number on the scale per se that matters. It's more the body composition, it's more the body fat percentage. But people underestimate how much of a strong indicator your body weight going down is of your body composition improving, right? So a lot of times people will start with, I just want to be 15% body fat because that's what matters most, and they know that. And I have to almost have a conversation with them like, yes, that means we're going to lose weight. That's what that means, right? And so yeah, it's interesting because when it comes to losing fat and gaining muscle on a pound for pound basis, losing 1 pound of fat is even infinitely easier than gaining 1 pound of muscle, right? Infinitely easier than gaining 1 pound of muscle. Like if any of us, if we all had to, we could all like lose 30 pounds if we really needed to within the next like month. We would starve ourselves and we'd, run marathons every single day. We could all lose 30 pounds if we had to in the next month. Build 30 pounds of muscle in the next month? Not gonna happen. Build 30 pounds of muscle in a lifetime? Might not even happen. Genuinely might not even happen, right? So anyway, it's very, very interesting how people don't really understand that even just if you want to end up at the same body weight at the end of the day, let's say you're 165 and you're like, I kind of like this weight of 165. That sounds right. I just want to be leaner, better body composition. The first step of the process, yeah, unless you use trend, my friend. Unless you apply trend. Exactly. The first step of the process is okay, we're going to lose fat while we build muscle, right? But the interesting thing is, this does not mean when we start the process, you're only losing fat because people have this misconception too, like, oh, I guess I'll cut first and then I'll focus on building muscle. But you are building muscle throughout the process. Like you said earlier, Jason, if you were maybe a little bit younger and had a little bit easier time building muscle because you had higher testosterone, maybe the weight loss on the scale wouldn't have been so drastic. That's probably totally true. Maybe not like half type of thing, but maybe a little bit less. Maybe build muscle a tiny bit faster with higher testosterone levels when you're younger, maybe. But if you weren't building any muscle whatsoever, the weight loss would have been even more drastic, right? But you are building muscle, right? So people also have the misconception that you can't build muscle while you lose fat, and that's just simply not the case. And the way you can literally guarantee that, apart from obviously getting like DEXA scans and body fat percentage measurements and stuff like that, that does measure your lean mass increasing over time, is you just look at your performance, right? Because the only way specifically when you're losing body weight that you are able to lift more weight. Okay, because when you're losing body weight, you're smaller. Your leverages for lifting weight are actually worse. That has nothing to do with your muscle size, just like the actual shape of your body and the leverage points of your body are worse for moving bigger weights when you're a smaller human being. All right. That's why professional strongman, yes, they build a ton of muscle, but they also get really fat on purpose because literally the increased size and weight improves their leverages for lifting more weight. So you're like in the opposite case, everybody mainly indicates in the opposite case where they're losing weight, getting smaller, so to speak. But if you're also getting stronger while you're losing weight, you're building muscle. The only way that weight is moving, you're moving more weight for more reps, is if that muscle got bigger and got stronger. Right. So yeah, people they have this misconception that you're only going to lose fat first and then later I'll focus on building muscle. Right. But yeah, it's really good that you kind of see that. And I guess like the long game of this, I thought this was really interesting because I sent we have a company that helps us produce content, and they're asking me just about like some progressions that I made and things like that. And I sent them this picture of me at 184 pounds. Must have been about 3 years ago. Let me see if I can find the picture actually. I think this would be really interesting to share with you guys. 1 second here. Uh, Really, really interesting. And just to demonstrate like how crazy this process is when it comes to body composition versus body weight. Give me 1 second here. Okay. I got the first one. Let's see if we can pull the second one. So this share my screen. 1 sec. This here is me at 184 pounds. Okay. Uh this I believe I want to say this was 2019. Okay, 184 pounds, 2019. Like obviously some muscle mass, like some body fat as well. Somewhere between probably 16 and 20% body fat here. 184 pounds. Okay. Now This will be very interesting for anybody concerned with body composition, which is everybody's concerned. This picture, one sec, right here, share screen. Boom. This is like 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago. Also 184 pounds. Same exact body weight. Okay, same exact body weight. And so I sent this to the content team that's helping us, and I knew they would get a kick out of it. I was like, same exact weight in both photos. Like maybe we could talk about building muscle and losing fat at the same time. And they're like, yeah, yeah, that sounds crazy. How do you do it? How do you do it? Tell us. And I was like, well, the secret is you first off, there's it's not like, okay, I want to be, about this end goal body composition and body weight. I'm going to do this special building muscle and losing fat at the same time approach, body recomposition approach. I actually bought a book on this subject one time just because I was like, how do you do it? And body composite recomposition is just losing fat while you train with progressive overload and eat enough protein. That's all it is. So you train with progressive overload, eat enough protein so that you can build muscle. While you lose fat, you get to a leaner body fat percentage. You kind of maintain that for a bit, and then you kind of enter a little bit of a caloric surplus for a bit. And then you cut again, and a little bit of caloric surplus again. And then you cut again. So what people don't see between those two photos is that I've like done a cut, a caloric deficit phase, and then like a very slow, very moderate weight regain like 8 times or 10 times or something like that. Like maybe more than I can even count. I've just cut and then okay, maintain slash gain weight very slowly. And then cut again and maintain slash gain weight very slowly. That's it. That is literally the entire game that you do for life. For life. So right now I'm more in one of those maintain slowly gain weight phases where I cut down from 193 to about 178 was my lowest. And now I hang out around like 184, slow weight regain. And then I'm just going to cut again. The next time I cut, I'll have more muscle, right? Build muscle throughout the entire process. And that's how it works. That's how this process works. So, Jason, for you, probably is going to look something like that, where we get to a certain level of leanness where we're really, really happy with it. And then we kind of like main gain up the calories, still building muscle. You will notice that you'll progress a little bit faster than you're progressing when you're in a caloric deficit.
Mhm.
And then you'll kind of get to a weight where you're like, okay, don't want to go higher than this. Cut again. Again, cut again. That's it. That's the whole game. And then you look down 3 years down the road and you're like, dang, I'm 165 again. But you look completely different, right? Pretty
Yeah,
awesome.
that's it. It's been fascinating. I love. I think I told you guys this when I first started. I love learning about this, anything, and so it's been really fun to kind of dive into it, listening to you guys. I've started seeking out other, opinions from some of these physiology doctors and stuff on how the body works and stuff, and it's really really fascinating, and it's been fun to just learn it and see that what's possible.
Mhm.
But also like recognizing like I had like 145 was just not something I even considered because I don't I just I don't think it was ever possible, right? Or that it was, even what I would want to be. Part of it is, I have high school athletes, college athlete now, and they're trying to mass up. Well, the one of them's trying to mass up a little bit. For him, he's actually a little shorter than I am, but for him, 150 looks really small because he's trying to pitch a baseball and he needs to have some mass on him to
Yeah.
protect his arm and shoulder and stuff. And so I'm like, well, if he's small at 150, like why would I want to get smaller than that? But I'm a different person with a different plan, right? And honestly, the fittest I ever was I was between 145 and 150 in college when I was swimming. And so it makes sense that actually this is probably a really good weight for me.
Yeah.
And to and over time, yeah, settling in somewhere, but like you guys have talked about, you usually set yourselves in some sort of 5 to 10 pound range that you allow yourself to fluctuate in. So
Yeah.
yeah, eventually as I build back up, like just fluctuating around 150, I will probably be a really good spot for me for a really long time. So
Yeah, it really, really will. And yeah, it's really interesting too because you have sons obviously that are if you look at their body weight at around 150, that looks really small to them. I'm actually kind of curious. When you look at your sons, like, would you say their body fat percentage is leaner than yours, or would you say yours is getting leaner than theirs?
um now I'm probably a little leaner. Before, no, I mean he was definitely, I think we had, he was probably in the 14 to 16 range, right? But
Yeah.
now I've come down to where I'm close to that.
Yeah.
but I'm smaller than him situation.
Yeah.
I weigh a little less than him, but that's because again, like he's done more weightlifting. He started lifting again in prep for his fall season, and I'm feeling really good that I'm squatting my body weight and deadlifting. I broke 200 pounds, and he's out there like putting the same weight on and just killing it, right? Because he's way better trained than I am right now.
Yeah.
So I see it. He's got more muscle mass. He should have more muscle mass, but for him, it looks small
Right.
because he's also had phases where he's been much bigger,
Right.
but probably higher body fat as well, like a lot higher body fat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of going back and forth, but
That definitely makes sense. Yeah, it's interesting. Something I've noticed too is that a lot of times if you lose, unless this is not necessarily in the case, if you're coming from an obese standpoint to losing a ton of weight, losing, 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds type of thing, yeah, you're gonna look smaller, but that's kind of like the goal, right? Jason, when you started, you're not in the obese category, right? Like maybe consider it like skinny fat-ish
right.
type of starting point. So when you're at that point, and this is important for people who are starting in the obese category to know too, because you're going to get to the point where you're like skinny fat, and that's like step one, right? Like go from obese to no longer obese, right? When you're at that point and you go from like skinny-ish fat to lean, you might look a little smaller, at least in clothes to start out with.
That's it. It's the thing closed, man. Yeah, I want to talk about that
Yeah.
because they you even see on Facebook they got these like dad shirts that make you look really good, because
Mhm.
it accentuates the right moments. And yeah, I could do that. I made it. My shoulders probably looked bigger in a t-shirt, but didn't want to take that t-shirt off. Right now, I'm walking the neighborhood shirtless every day to get my son in, and I am not in any way ashamed of that. I'm like, yeah,
How does that feel to be able to do that now?
I love it, right? I've never been that kind of person, and I'm not, trying to show off or anything, but just I'm
No.
not ashamed to just go for a walk, get my sun because I feel like it's a big part of it too. Of I need my vitamin D and all that, and just go out for 20 minutes and walk the block and know that I'm not going to be embarrassed by that, right? It's not really, and that's it's yeah, I love it. It feels great. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
And yeah,
important.
so I think taking my shirt off, I guess if you measured me, I'm definitely smaller in the waist and some of the other measurements, but I look much bigger
Yeah.
than I did before.
That's important for people to know because so many guys have this fear of I'm going to get too skinny. So many guys,
Literally talked to a guy today.
yeah, they're like I'm going to get too, I'd be too skinny then, and I'm like, okay, like that's fine. That's because you don't even understand how good you're going to look when you lose that much fat. So people have this misunderstanding that they're going to look too skinny, but when you get leaner, you without a shirt look way bigger, way more jacked, right? Like even me at my current physique right now, the heaviest I ever got, 2020, um, I wanted to deadlift 600 pounds. That was like my primary goal, sort of lift for. And I was training for it and I maintained like relative leanness. I'd say I probably got up to like 19-20% body fat because those last 4 weeks I was just like, whatever it takes, I want the best leverage as possible. And so I got up to 206 pounds about 4 years ago with much less muscle mass. I was looking fun. I was looking like I was having a good time. Okay, I even actually remember getting my blood tested at that point, and I was like, I wasn't pre-diabetic yet, but I was like on the high end of normal, and I was like, ooh, this is okay. Yeah, this I should not be heavier than this. Wasn't pre-diabetic yet, but I was on the high end of normal, so I got decently chunky for my standards anyway, and when I was 206 pounds in shirts and sweaters, I looked like some guys.
Yoked.
Yeah, you came here and yeah, we're gonna do a bench press. I looked huge in like sweaters and shirts. And now I look smaller in sweaters and shirts. Like obviously still look aesthetic and athletic and lean in clothing. But now with a shirt off, like it's like, oh, doughboy compared to super jack dude. So people do need to have this understanding of like you probably if for what you have in mind as your ideal goal, you're going to be way lighter on the scale than you think right now. People tend to really underestimate. I was making the joke with Justin earlier. I was like, people don't get how fat they are. Like people don't know how fat they really are.
Yeah, it's hard too because it's where like the wife and I talk about this, like learning to people ask me like, well, what's up? And I'll tell a little bit about my story and stuff, and they'll be like, the first thing like 90% of people say is, oh, you didn't have any fat to lose. You didn't have anything to lose. What are you doing? You're wasting away. I'm like, actually, it was pretty bad. But then, the issue is normal
Mhm.
for the average American is, gosh, I was probably considered still thin to the average person, right? And that's and it's hard,
I
it's
think that's the biggest misconception is that shirt on versus shirt off,
yeah.
right? Like I talk to a bunch of guys that are like, "Oh, I'm 300 pounds, but I wear it well. I look good. I still look fine in a shirt." And it's like, bro, you're 300 pounds. Like you don't look good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's and then all the opposite perspective, right? Where you're like, I might have looked better in a shirt, but I take it off, and I didn't look so good.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
So
100%.
I think that's the best like limitless test. Um,
Yeah.
that's
Well, it's
interesting.
interesting too, like when people say I wear it well, it's like in comparison to what? Do you wear it well for the standard you believe you're supposed to be holding for yourself and how you want to present yourself, or just compared to the guy who's, fat too,
Mhm.
right? Like if you're in a group and everybody's overweight, yeah, you wear it well. Compared to what,
That's
right?
such a good question.
Yeah, it's like, dude, it's really, really, really sad when you see somebody who just cannot even acknowledge how far gone the issue is, right? But one